How can higher education best teach with AI? That's the subject of this week's Future Trends Forum session. We hosted the excellent José Bowen, author of a new edition of the Johns Hopkins University Press book he co-authored with Eddie Watson. Jose and the Future Trends Forum community explore this topic, touching on how to rethink assessment, what employers expect from graduates in the AI age, cognitive offloading, institutional transformation, and much more. I hope this session is useful to you. Please feel free to leave comments in the box below. Well, now we have the top of the hour. Why don't we start? Let me welcome everybody. Welcome to the Future Trends Forum. I'm really glad to see all of you here today. We have one of my favorite guests talking about one of the great topics of our era, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. But before we begin the conversation, let me just explain what the forum is, how we work, what we hope to accomplish, how this is supported, and then we'll start with this week's discussion. Because the key thing here, if you're new to the forum, is that it's all about discussion. We're all about questions and answers, pushback and agreement. We don't have any presentations here. We don't have any slides. The whole idea is that we believe that we can best grapple with higher education's future by doing so collaboratively or collectively through conversation. And we've been doing this now for, in a couple of weeks, 10 years. And when I say we, there's a few of us. I'm Brian Alexander. I'm the forum's host, its creator, and your guide to the next hour. And with me is the excellent Weston Radomski. Weston's here to help you with any kind of technical challenges you have. So if you have any issues with the audio or video or the interface, please just ping Weston. They'll be glad to help you out. Now, I mentioned this is about discussion. And I just mentioned technology. So how the discussion works, again, if you're new here, is often through chat. People historically love the chat box. They're happy to put out all kinds of stuff, questions, ideas, footnotes, job offers, good puns, bad puns. And the chat box is very, very lively. I'll be monitoring it throughout. So please feel free to do that. And if you haven't actually done so, why don't you just quickly paste in who you are and where you are geographically right now. We'll be glad to hear from you. We've already had some folks doing this. Grand Junction, Colorado is 42 above. But Chris, that drought is awful. I'm sorry to hear that. Quite a few people are in the snow. Shelby, how cold is it there? And Toronto, I bet it's a little chilly there too. Oh, we have Monroe, we have Michigan. Oh, all kinds of people from across the U.S. And of course, we have Armenia. Hello, Brent. Good to see you. And Amanda in Fairbanks. Oh my gosh. You can guide us here in this winter storm. You are the expert. Shelby, if you do get snow in Florida, please take care. I hope you don't melt down. I know how that can be shocking there. All right, as you can see, people love using the chat box, so please feel free to do that. If you would like, we have a Q&A box open, so if you'd like to post a question, please feel free to do that. And if we have time, depends on how we manage this, we can just turn to audio, and people can open up their mics and post a question out loud. But we're grateful to everybody for all of their vocal, textual, mental contributions. Now, we're grateful to some other people as well who help make this possible. We have some supporters who help us pay the bills and keep the lights on. So one of them is NiserNet in New York State, a nonprofit that helps that state's colleges and universities get on great broadband. They also do great professional development work, for which we're really appreciative. And we're also grateful to our friends on Patreon. People there collaboratively help fund our Grappling with the Future project. Some people contribute as little as $1 a month to make sure that our electricity is working, and some contribute as much as $10 a month. We're really grateful to them for their support, and you can join them. Just check it out, the link in the chat box that Blessing just posted, patreon.com/Brian Alexander. Okay, that's our introduction. That's enough of me yapping at you. Now let's turn to this week's topic. For years, we've been working here on the forum on AI. We've approached it from multiple angles. We've approached it from the technological details. We've considered teaching and learning. We've considered its implications on research, on libraries. And we've been doing this quite thoroughly because this is one of the great subjects of our time. And with me is one of our favorite guests, José Bowen, who is, as far as I can tell, actually about 12 people in a suit. He is a world-class jazz musician, a professor and scholar, a president, and a consultant, and now one of the world's leading experts on teaching and learning with AI. He and our mutual friend, Eddie Watson, have just co-authored a second edition of their Johns Hopkins University Press book on teaching with AI. And so that's going to be the focus for the rest of the hour, is looking at how that works. Jose, welcome back to the forum.
Thanks, Brian. Glad to be here. And congratulations on the great new book.
Well, thank you, thank you. You can see it looming over my shoulder. Peak Higher Ed is right there for everybody. Friends, if you're new to the forum, I'm going to put a couple of questions to our guests to get the ball rolling so we can have some stuff to chew on. But after that, it's going to be over to you. So please think about the questions that you might have concerning AI and teaching. And again, use the Q&A box or use the chat box to put them up. First question I've got to ask, though, Jose, is looking ahead for the rest of 2026, what are you personally going to be working on? What are you going to be up to in terms of output and projects and artifacts?
Well, so last year I visited 100 campuses. So I'm currently doing my taxes in 22 states and 6 countries. That's a nightmare. But AI is helping, of course. One of my favorite new hacks is having Claude Cowork relabel all of my receipts with the amount and the place where it was spent and the date. So change the
Nice.
title so I don't have to open the files, and then organize them by date, not by amount or whatever, But so I'm mostly visiting campuses. I'm doing workshops, not writing another edition of the book, hopefully. Greg, you heard it from here first. And don't talk to Eddie about that. But I'm trying. I'm not a technical person, right? I'm a humanist. I took the one Fortran course, so I do have to do more vibe coding. I do have to. Claude Cowork is installed, and I still like GenSpark better because of the interface. I feel like I can control what GenSpark does. So, but I clearly have to figure out. MCP and how to get, this. I don't like the term swarm of agents. Add that to your list, right? We have to come up with a better term than swarm of agents. But the idea that a stacked library, so I'm still getting my head around that. That's still fairly new. My computer scientist friends tell me there's nothing there, but I think they're wrong.
Mm.
I've had this argument with a couple of, that's just, this plus that. And it's like, okay, but if it can make me do, so I gotta really figure that out. So that's this year, and I update the website every day still. So I'm back to having to do email every day, which I really enjoyed not doing for a while. But I'll put the link in the chat.
I would gladly automate most of my email doing. But I assume you're going to be doing more traveling and more virtual gigs for the rest of the year?
Yeah. So I'm visiting. I'm going to Gulf Coast, Florida University next week. I was at Kentucky virtually just before this, and so yeah, I'm visiting campuses and people. So I learn a lot because people are all over the place. I mean, right? I've never used it to I'm doing a vibe coding class. I took I had Oboe, which is a make your own class thing. Do a teach me how to vibe code.
Hmm.
Teach me how, so, but that is where I'm working. I think we've calcified a bit, which I don't like to see.
Hmm. Hmm.
The kind of objectors and the environment and the cheat. That there's this. We're further apart, but I think Eddie's new survey with AAC New that shows that we are really pretty divided. That even though we mostly agree that students need AI skills, we're about 50-50 on whether or not we want to teach them and use them.
Yeah. No, it's a really important survey. Well, let me ask I have a couple of questions from folks who couldn't make it here today, by the way. And they're going to hopefully hit this up in the
I
recording.
don't get to face my accusers. What?
I know. It's the digital
Okay.
world. But one question comes from our dear friend George Station, out in California, who wants to know how you think things have changed or not changed since the first edition of this book, specifically in terms of faculty and staff reception to teaching and learning with AI.
So as I said, so on the one hand, I think things have calcified. So I think we've got about half of the faculty. We've got many more faculty who are trying stuff who are now more advanced. They don't want to learn how to prompt. They want to learn about workflow and about custom bots and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and then we've got the other factor that I still have to convince. There's always somebody in the room who I've never used AI,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's always one or two. It's fewer, but they're still there. They mostly just don't show up. I think people have got a better understanding of the nuance of how students feel, that yes, students are using it, but they think if you're using it, you're lazy. So there's the weird mix of sort of that. So I think we're starting to see more sophisticated usage. This AAC&U Institute that Eddie runs. We've got 190 campuses this year, but the projects this year are much more sophisticated. Last year everybody wanted to do a policy. We need a policy. And now it's like, okay, great. How did that work out? And so now people are thinking, well, how do I deal with adoption? How do I deal with this? Lots of places are doing a minor or doing some, Creighton has a new AI. They were in last year's, but they're doing they've added it to Gen Ed. So where do you put it in Gen Ed? So those are better discussions to be saying, where should I embed AI literacy in Gen Ed? What does it mean? Who is going to teach it? How do I deal with the credits? That sort of, we're starting to have those conversations rather than just for or against.
Well, that's definitely a sign of development over time. George, thank you for the really good question. I think you made it in to our session now, actually. And Jose, thank you. Thank you for the thoughtful and very concise answer. I've been seeing quite a few of those programs starting to appear as well. Another question.
Let me add one more. So I'm doing more. So I'm doing more sessions for boards on strategy because I see the strategy question in the chat. So I'm talking to my third board this year next week. I'm actually doing a board session tomorrow. So that's interesting, right? And so what level, because, I was a president, so I know, do you want me to tell your board this? Otherwise, they'll want to be involved, and you don't want them that involved, right? So, how do you give them enough to feel like you're dealing with the situation? But but my approach so I'm dealing with cabinets too, but my approach is, okay, so you've got to have some knowledge of capabilities, so some of overlap with what I do for faculty. But then there's what I call CLEAR, the kind of the entry level or micro strategy, right? So my acronym CLEAR. So you need controls, right? Everybody needs to figure out, what systems can people use, what's okay, what's FERPA, how does that work? You need L, you need learning, right? You need professional development. People need to understand how these tools work. E, you need examples, right? People like examples. Well, how are they using it in physics? What could I do for assignments, right? And then you need, some adoption program, right? How do I disseminate information so people say, oh, here's a it's one from a corporate client, but somebody who has like 7,000 stores. One of the managers figured out that he could do the schedule for employees because it's like, I don't want to work Tuesday next week and I got to go to the doctor on Wednesday. And so scheduling takes up a lot of work for a manager. And so he figured out, I can have AI take all of these requests and do the schedule for the week. And so I said, so now you need to get you have 6,999 other managers who need this tool. So let people experiment, right? Let them experiment and do stuff, and then disseminate what works. But then, you need a review process, right? Sometimes you're causing harm. And so every campus needs a review process for this didn't work. But you have to have some failure. You have to have some. So that's a culture shift. So I call that MicroStrategy or CLEAR. Right? There's some things every campus needs to be doing. Figuring out what platforms people are doing, faculty learning, figuring out how to get people to experiment, how to adopt, and then how to review. But real strategy is the art of sacrifice. It's like, what are you not going to do? How do you figure it? And so but you can't so you have to have done this baseline. And then for real strategy, it's, okay, what's the new competition? What kind of institution are we going to be? I think the future is, I don't know, saying this to the futurist, right? We're going to have, I've probably stolen 90% of this from you, right? We're going to have boutique institutions, right? The Harvards, the places that charge, $250,000, and man, you better have lots of relationships, right? You better, and then we're going to have the cheaper option. which is now different because in the old days, right? Anyone who teaches strategy knows that until a few years ago, the model for strategy was you can either be Walmart or Apple, right? You can either be low cost, but you sacrifice non-conforming customers, right? Cheap, 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 or you can be Apple or Chanel if you like, right? Where people will pay a premium because you offer something special, right? But now with AI, you can offer customized cheap degrees, right? Like the Agatha Christie writing course, or the you can now have one-on-one MBA. It's just me with the avatar, so it's customized and it's one-on-one, and it's also cheap, but it's not personal. So I think that this, where are you going to sit? Right? Are you going to be boutique? Can you charge? If you're going to charge a lot, you've got to offer something different, or you're going to have the new Southern New Hampshire and University of Phoenix, right? The new online delivered, Silicon Valley high school model, which is the high school campus that has the dogs as teachers and professors and counselors, et cetera. So, but it's customized, right? You have your own one-on-one. It's just no people. So figuring out where you're going to sit, how you're going to deal with this new competition, I'm seeing many more people now want to think about what's our strategy, how do we survive that?
Excellent. I was going to forward a question from someone else that was pretty future-oriented, and I'm really glad that you went there. Especially thinking about dogs as instructors. Thank you for unfolding that further. Nicholas Proctor wants to know this. He's curious if you think college students in 5 to 6 years will all have personalized AI agents that they used for writing throughout high school.
Yes.
Okay.
I think by this fall, my prediction is that we will now have students wanting to bring their support robot, right? Either those little dogs that you've seen that are, the robot dogs. Yeah. But I think you'll also be seeing people who, right? And again, it folds their laundry, but it also, right, it does. It's their personalized tutor. It understands their other stuff and helps them with their homework, et cetera. And so I think we're going to see those robots, but certainly, students are now developing, I want you to write it in my voice. Right, students they've gotten clever about how to hide the cheating, and so right, if I give you my old essays, don't make it too much better, make it a little bit better, right? So it's a B plus instead of a B minus. Don't make it so noticeable. Don't use big words that I don't, whatever, So that level of prompting, I think, again, the very best students have been there for a while, but I think we're going to start to see more and more students there.
Okay, that is something that I don't know how many institutions are ready for, but this is. Thank you for that answer. Nicholas, thank you for the great question. Questions are piling up like mad, and I'm going to try and smush some of them together, depending on how they go. Our mutual friend Ed Finn says that he appreciates your insights. He was first introduced to you through Teaching Naked, and now he says, with the call for many to go back to no-tech classrooms, what are your thoughts about how to discern between when and how to approach AI pedagogically?
So this is where I think that the calculator analogy is useful, right? I get it's not an exact analogy, fine. But the calculator changed math teaching forever. It didn't eliminate the need to teach addition, but it did reduce the need to teach long division, right? I don't have to learn how to add up long columns of numbers, right? I need to have some estimation. I need to have some sense of how this works. I still need to do some of it. But every math teacher on the planet had to now wrestle with two questions. One is, when do I introduce the calculator? Not if, when. And two, what do I no longer teach so that I can spend some time on calculators or now Excel spreadsheets, right? So it's going to change, right, what and where. And so the idea of having a tech-free classroom, sure, but for a while, right? I can't graduate seniors who don't use the internet and have no digital literacy. They won't be able to survive in the world. So the question is when to introduce it. So I might say, okay, you're a freshman writing. I don't want you to use AI as a freshman to write. But by the time you graduate, I know that one of the questions you were going to be asked when you graduate, because this is the number one interview question at the moment from my corporate clients. Everybody in HR says, we ask every one of your graduates, how do you use AI to make your work better and faster? And if they have no answer, we don't hire them, right? Because it's like, why would I hire
Yeah.
you when AI can do, right? As I say, if you can only do work as good as AI, you may have learned a lot, but I won't hire you. So you have to learn how to think and be an expert, but you also have to learn how to do better work than AI, which means you can use the AI as a tool in the same way that I use a spell checker, right? I could not write books without a spell checker.
Yeah.
I'd be still looking up words. So,
Yeah.
it's true. AI does not, the spell checker doesn't make me a better speller, but it does make my spelling better. And so
Mm,
AI can
mm,
do
mm,
some things. So the
mm.
question is, what are the things our students need to be able to do that will allow, if they work with AI, they can do better than AI? So as the job for us, we're teachers, right? We get the big bucks to figure out what the sequence should be. So this is a pedagogy question. When do I introduce AI? How do I have students use it? So there's a place for technology-free classrooms. Lots of people are having students write. I have students write in class, on paper or without AI. But then I have them use AI to make it better than either AI alone or they alone could do.
There are questions that are coming in, Jose, around this, and I want to work some of them in further. First is what do you think of Neil Ferguson's cloister and the starship idea? For those who haven't heard this, the idea is the starship is the metaphor for AI, blazingly advanced technology, and the cloister is the place with no AI. And so his idea was that colleges would alternate between that. You would different spaces and different times. Students would be in the cloister or they'd be in the starship. Does that sound like a useful rubric to start thinking through?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think that's actually one of the ways, and some of that's also fast and slow thinking, right? It's
Yes.
contemplation. It's the
Yes.
contemplation. I mean, so I think that. But again, in some ways, we've already lost this battle, right? I mean, I admit that when I go for a walk with the dogs, I listen to a podcast on headphones, right? I put the
Hmm.
earbud in, right?
Hmm.
And what I should
Hmm.
do is listen to the birds chirp, right? I get that, but I have too many podcasts to listen to. And so, right, I have to actually say, oh, I am not going to take a podcast on this walk. That's a hard, and for most people, that battle's been lost. I mean, just
Yeah.
go to a waiting room in the doctor and just look for anybody looking through those old There's nobody looking through old magazines anymore, right? So the idea that I'm just waiting, right? I mean, I wrote about this in Teaching Naked. The idea of waiting, sitting in the doctor's office, waiting with nothing to do. Everybody pulls out their phone now and has instant stimulation. So
Hmm.
reclaiming, and as somebody who teaches, right, long musical works, Bruckner, Mahler, Wagner, God said,
Mm,
right,
mm.
there's a reason, right, that Wagner invented the theater where you can't turn your chair, right? Italian theaters, you have a chair, you can move them, right? And Wagner put these uncomfortable benches so that you couldn't look away, right? And because he wanted, and then can you imagine? It's 1871 and you're in a theater, and for the first time in your existence, the lights go out. Right? People were like, "What happened? What happened? Panic!" Right? Because he wanted, right, the lights to go out,
Yeah.
and it's like, wow, it's dark, and so. But that's that idea of being alone with a piece of music for an hour. I mean, I struggle with that with my students. But I have for 20 years. It's like,
Yeah.
don't listen to Bruckner while you're doing the dishes. It's
Mm,
not the same experience.
mm,
And so, but
mm.
it's been hard to convince. So I think that battle, probably we should re-engage, but in some ways we lost that battle 20 years ago. But no, I do love that idea. And I think the battle to reclaim contemplation is one that we've been having for a long time and should probably rethink how to do that.
Well, I appreciate that, especially as another Bruckner fan. And I'd be happy to go down that road. But as a good host, I won't. But I appreciate your excellent riff on that prompt. In the chat, to your earlier point, Nina Huntman mentions that Boston Consulting Group released a report about early career and skills. They already found that fresh college grads are showing up with their AI workflows and robots and asking, "Can I bring those to work with me?" And then to follow that up, Vahid Masroor says that he was facilitating an online class, and an adult participant made the case for what I consider smart and appropriate use of AI as a text improver, like you were saying about spell check, and he couldn't disagree with him.
Yeah, so a third of Fortune 500 companies require Grammarly for every internal and external communication. Require, right? Not optional, require. So that idea that we want to have a higher standard, we don't want to make sure there's no spelling, there's nothing else. So my corporate clients are having the same thing that I hear here. So that, 2 years ago I was hearing about, oh well, we can only use Copilot, we can only use this. What do we? Sorry. So, but now, right? Most of them have their own, right, cloud third party. So one of my big clients has, they're a Fortune 10, right? They have, every unit has its own. They have the finance version, the legal version, right? They have different tools, and so, in fact, their bit of getting people to adopt it is all about workflow. Right. So they've dealt with the controls of security. And so now if you come up with a new workflow, share it with everybody else. Right. If you're the manager of a store who figured out how to do the schedule, because then it's peer to peer. And so that's because they're having the same problem that we are, right? Is how do I get an old school accountant to trust this new tool to do, our taxes in a new way, when I don't trust it, and I tried it a year ago and it didn't work. And so this idea of workflow, where's the right place to check? So I do think the conversation in the business world right now is all about, it's not if, it's about workflow. It's about how do I, and who is it? It's not who is it who just did I love the verification tax bot that I saw yesterday. Somebody will remember who posted that on LinkedIn. But that's a verification tax is a clever way to put that. That, right? If it takes me 10 minutes if it takes me an hour to do a task, but AI can only do it in 10 minutes, but it takes me 2 hours to check it, then of course there's a tax, and right, it's not worth doing it. So that you have to figure out, if AI can do it fast and I can check it fast, then it's right. So, but that calculus, that is the central question now in my corporate clients, is when is it worth it? How do we figure out the right workflow? When is it worth it to have AI do it and then have us check it? Do we have the right everything else in there?
Okay, so this is something to think about, how we angle that in higher ed as we prepare students for that world. We have a bunch of questions that circle around the question of resistance to AI, and one of them I want to pick on is from Shauna Pote, who says that she's a doctoral candidate studying tensions regarding AI use in higher ed and what those tensions reveal about institutional assumptions regarding legitimate evidence of learning, authorship, and academic rigor. And can I just say, Shauna, we need to have you on the program. You need to finish your dissertation rapidly and get it out there. We need this. But her question is, do you see the current anxiety around AI in higher ed as primarily an integrity problem, or as a legitimacy problem about what student work can still reliably signify at scale?
Yeah, so I think there are two things here. So the one is, right, we're weird, right? We're trying to we care about process because the hard work, right? It's like going to the gym, right? It's not about who has the most push-ups, right? Only the person who does the push-ups gets the benefit, right? So watching somebody else do push-ups, is not that useful. So, cheating at the gym you don't get any benefit, right? So we care about doing the work to get the benefit. It's not just about, oh, those push-ups are more beautiful than these push-ups. So on the one hand, authorship is going to change, right? I believe that we are going to end up with a situation where at the moment, oh, I don't want a video game or a movie that used AI, or I don't want to read an AI novel. But we're starting to have people who win prizes and do things, and right? So I think we will end up in a few years. I don't think it's going to be that long, right? Fan fiction will be the first place this happens, right? There'll be going to be 100 Buffy or Star Trek, novels partially written by AI. And some group of people will start to accept those, just like we accept spell checkers. Nobody says you wrote it with a spell checker, you're illegitimate. On the other hand, I think with AI, unlike spell checkers, we will have organic authorship. Brian used AI, but I'm organic. I didn't use AI in my novel. And there will be, just like with organic produce, some people will be willing to spend more for organic produce in the same way they will for organic literature, and other people won't. And I think if we've seen anything over the summer with K-pop Demon Hunters and, Breaking Rust, is that the name of the country song that's #1, right? We will start to see people are willing to listen to and buy AI music, and other people won't be. But the pop scene, that will happen. So for universities, right? I mean, what we think is legitimate is probably not going to be what everybody else thinks is legitimate. I mean, does it matter how you did the literature search, right? If you, Brian, go and spend 6 months finding a chemistry experiment for your dissertation that nobody's ever done, and I just use Edison Scientific to do a precedent search, and mine takes 15 minutes, and I come back to my advisor and say, okay, I did a precedent search, and here's what my dissertation is going to be on.
Yeah.
Is that really less legitimate? I mean, you could say, oh, if I learn something by doing the search, then okay, tell me what I'm learning and why I have to do it manually. And if that's true, I may do it. But if it's just because you did it that way, then there's a generational gap of legitimacy, right? Your generation thinks, looking up words in a thesaurus is legitimate, and I think, using the AI tool is fine.
As you speak, people are flinging questions and comments and responses. Laura Murray asked, "How do
I
you?"
have that effect on people.
I can see that. We all, if I can make a crude analogy, we all want to pick our instruments and join the combo. There's a one question came up was, how do you ensure the new novel is organic? And Mathieu Plourde says it'll be sold at the hipster coffee shop, which is a nice answer. And then Kate Herzog suggests AI Bruckner. So before we go down that road, let's bring up George Station. George, if your camera is ready and your mic is ready, and you've got a couple of minutes before class, why don't you join us and follow up with your point?
Okay. Hi. Can you hear me? Okay, Brian.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you, and thanks for asking part of my question earlier.
Of course.
And there are no simple questions, I think is probably the new normal with this topic. But I've got maybe one quick follow-up and then my real question. That's always my way. So on the career aspect with students graduating, what about our in-between students, the people who are experiencing this rapid release of Chat GPT across our campuses over the last couple of years? The big CSU contract that I know you know about, the one of the New York uni systems as well. Those huge contracts that are ongoing. That said, everybody gets it right now at this level. But anyway, we're all dealing with this right now and adapting and doing our best in whatever way we're doing it. But what about these graduates that are going to be looking for jobs like this May, the next couple of years? Are they doomed to be kind of on the lower half of two tiers? Are we still a two-tiered system? Are they going to be forever behind, or is something going to evolve for them because they're on the cusp helping faculty, staff, and administrators figure this out right now?
So let me take that first. So I've just put in the chat. I think the best economic analysis I've seen recently is this by Charles Jones at Stanford. And so, I mean, it's got some math there's some math in it, but but I think he points out a couple of things. One is that he says this could really grow the economy, but it'll be spread out over a year, so it won't be 50% all at once. But he thinks that there's real likelihood that this will divide jobs, haves and have-nots. This will accelerate income inequality, but it will be a different income inequality, and there will be new skills, right? The person in the cloister who's, dare I say, some faculty, right, who were thoughtful and slow, but slow, and so, right, it takes us a long time. Some of those skills, people won't be willing to wait for the slow, careful analysis. I mean, that's already the case in our attention economy. So some students who may be C students right now, but they're good at using AI, maybe even to cheat, right, will be able to produce better work than our students who were not cheating and were learning those really important, interesting skills, but it doesn't show up in the same way. So, but either way, it means that I think the possibility of job loss for people who can't keep up is real, and the wealth benefits for the people who can compete, I think, are substantial. There's already this difference. I show people, the 30 to 40% a increase in salary for graduates who have AI, or some. Again, they're not computer scientists. They're just able to immediately go into the workplace and add value. So for the students that we kept in the cloister through senior year, they're suffering. They're not able to get jobs as quickly, and in this economy, that's real. So I think that income inequality could happen. I also think there's a real chance that we'll see fewer jobs. I don't think that'll happen quickly, but I think there's a chance that we will end up seeing a bigger economy, but with fewer jobs, because AI can do some of that work. I mean, we're seeing layoffs and that kind of stuff. It's not clear yet whether those are AI layoffs, but that's certainly a possibility.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for going deeper into that, and thanks for the link to the study as well. I'll try to grab that before I have to rush off to class here. I guess the other part was my real part two that Brian, I think, may already know about, and that's basically all the societal issues. And I'm wondering if your revised edition or the talks that you're going to be giving in educational spaces, are you going to take all those other societal issues into account? And I'll mention the one that came up in the chat is the environmental impact. And you can, it may include data centers for sure, but then other things as well. And somebody used the term environmental racism, which I'm very comfortable using in this regard, because it depends on where these data centers end up popping up as we see cities and towns saying, "Not near me, please." The other is societal issue, I think, that is just keeps coming at us is how easily these systems are warped for, I'm going to say, to do harm in terms of the gender and race hellscape that just keeps coming at us. Every Grok update hits the news now, the deep fakes and so on. And I'm wondering what you're experiencing as you talk to educators. And I also want to know, do our admins and execs, are they even having the rest of this conversation, or are they avoiding it? Because it's a difficult conversation to have between faculty and administrators locally. But yeah, I think that is probably true on a lot of campuses. So I don't know what admins and execs know about AI. I don't know if they know what you know, or if they are just saying, we got to have some of this AI stuff because everybody else has AI stuff.
Well, I am being asked to do sessions just for staff and for administrative staff especially. There is going to be job loss there. Hang on. You got to go. Out. Okay. So I do think that there is some awareness. That's probably where there's going to be job loss on your campuses, right? Is there'll be fewer administrative staff, and AI will be able to do some of that. To Tom's point, there will be new jobs, but those skill sets will be a little different. So it's not unlike the problem of, do we train the coal miners to do coders? It's some of that. But I do think there could be, right, other revolutions like this have created new jobs, like the internet. But this one could be different. Again, Brian's an expert. We just don't know. I think we don't know there. So the societal impact, again, I think Charles Jones, who I mentioned, he thinks we're massively underinvesting in the risk. He says, if in fact we're going to get anything close to these GDP gains, we should be investing 30 times as much as we are in safety protocols. I'll just tell the one story that I heard on LinkedIn yesterday, where somebody was using an agent to make a restaurant reservation. So they said, make a reservation for me at this restaurant. So the website wasn't working. And so the agent went to 11 Labs and created a voice for itself and then called the restaurant and made a reservation on the phone. Right. So, this is the tip of the iceberg. And so I think, we are going to have bad things happen. Way worse than we can imagine, I think. Data theft, our identity, all that kind of stuff is going to happen. I'm a little less worried about the environmental, not because I want to give them a pass, but because I think this is a little bit like the issues of, prisons or nuclear waste, right? It's all about where you put them. And right. So, right, nuclear energy turns out, to not be as bad for the planet, but locally, it's a disaster if they want to bury it under your house. So, I think it's Andy Masley who's, his most recent analysis is that he looked at the big data center in Kentucky, the huge one, and said it's ChatGPT it's like 600, having one In-N-Out burger is like 688 years of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And for students who complain about this, they say, so are you still using Netflix? Not in high def, surely. You're not using YouTube or TikTok, right? I mean, photos on your right. So we have a much bigger issue of the way that we use technology and what it does to data centers. Data centers are actually pretty efficient. Most of the water is recycled. But yeah, if it's near you and it drives up your electricity bill, that's bad. So I think that the issue of justice and region is important, but I think it's already going on in other levels, and so I don't think we should only talk about AI as the only problem of racial injustice of that sort of environmental justice. So
I think it's in the queue with the other issues that have preceded it. But it's definitely it's got to be in the queue.
It does. But I think that, again, the Netflix that most of us uses 10 to 20 times as much data center usage. And so, those of us, I won't use AI, but I'll use Netflix. Well, that's clearly right. So I want us to have a broader conversation about that. I think AI may be the impetus to finally talk about some of those things. But on a individual level, I do think, and by the way, Uria is an AI that only uses renewable energy, EURIA. I have on my website. I have a list of, in fact, I have at least 30 different cultural models. If you want to speak Afrikaans or Polish or Latin to your model, there are lots of different cultural models. But that too, right? The best models are coming out of the Middle East, right? The UAE can have its own model. Thailand cannot, right? So China, right? The rich countries want to have their own models, and other, right? So that's already happening too. I do think we're going to have a continuing proliferation, but I think a lot of that is driven by who has the money and the economic power to invest to compete against the U.S. But I think everybody, for security reasons, wants to have their own AI, just in the same way that Canada is now screwed because they use American planes, and so they need our software, and so they're tied into our military system, and so that will take a long time to undo.
That's the great national enemy, Canada, I think.
I'm going to have to leave in a second. I really appreciate you spending some time and the range of your response here. But I would like to hear a little bit about the hellscape part, because I've got students who actually don't want to come on camera for a lot of reasons. Part of it is because 5 years ago they were getting out of middle school, and and you can blame the pandemic. But another part of it is the deepfake issue that is basically hindering all of AI. And my online experience is getting kind of interesting because nobody wants deepfakes of themselves out there. And they frankly don't want to do what we're doing as, I'm going to say, previous generation people being online in this space. So they're seeing that negative experience that is largely due to AI. So how do we address that?
This is where, people need to pay attention and to vote. That Facebook, most of those students at some point were on a social media platform, and so all that data has now been given to ICE, right? So your car is listening. When you buy a car, you sign away the IP in your car. It's one of those, many pages that you sign, and so Ford has access to when you're speeding, but also when you talk about cat litter in your car. So. We have, again, bigger privacy issues. AI does enable that to be weaponized in a new way. There's no question about that. But the issue is that we have a lot of power concentrated in tech bros. And so do we trust Google or Microsoft, right? Most of us use Microsoft on our computer, so AI has access to all of the things in the cloud. I just don't want us to focus so narrowly on that issue that I say, okay, so you've taken pictures of yourself. Somebody's taken pictures of you. They're out there. If they want to do a deep fake of you, AI can probably find a picture of you It doesn't need very long. The amount of video you're going to get from this, get my hand gestures. Yeah. So I mean, but it absolutely could be a hellscape. Uh, if you didn't see that article about the Trump administration's use of AI memes in the Guardian today, that's just become another weapon. It does remind me of another regime, the right propaganda, right? The kind of just the daily use of AI memes to send messages to people. And you're right, my social media feed, I no longer think every cat video on Instagram, it's just not as much fun because I don't think that's not a real, right? That definitely, if there was a way to have an organic AI, organic social media with no AI on it that really worked for cat videos, I can see signing up for that.
George.
Okay.
But probably a trivial
for this
need.
conversation. Thanks, Brian.
George.
Thanks, George.
I appreciate the interaction so much, and this has been great. And this is definitely going to be fodder for my classes with my teacher ed students and their 30 students to come.
Let us know what they say. And thank you for the questions. We deeply appreciate you. Speaking of questions, we have a couple of big ones that I thought we could use to start to draw together some of these themes. We're racing through time, and friends, I think I'm going to have to turn this whole session into one giant Substack post, complete with everybody's questions and comments. So if there's anything you want me not to share, let me know. Tom Hames has a gift for asking deep questions with a few words. And this is one that I'm really struck by. You lay out a pathway for education to coexist with AI. Systems are resistant to change. Do you think education will get there through internal reform or through external collapse and replacement?
That's good, Tom. That's good. I think education, especially universities, are not like anything else, right? The Ford Motor Company doesn't have to deal with people who bought a Taurus in 1975 going, no, bring, nostalgia, they're not, their board isn't full of people who just, bought the product 40 years ago. And so, college boards are filled with people who believe that nostalgia is the answer. And so, but they also are willing to pay for it. So colleges die slowly. So, as long as alums are willing to donate to colleges that are doing things that are a century out of date, that they will die slowly. But I do think we are going to have new competitors. I know of at least one new EMBA program that's all AI avatar, totally customized for $5,000 or $6,000. So I think we're going to start to see new competitors, like we did with Southern New Hampshire. And so some institutions will make the pivot. Some will dig in, and some will dig in and survive because they're boutique, and others will dig in and die, but die slowly and won't be aware that they're dying until it's too late. But if you think about it, the biggest institutions at the moment are already. I mean, people always use the Ivies as the model for higher education. It's like that's a tiny sliver of who gets educated, right? Most people are educated at community colleges, at University of Phoenix, at Southern New Hampshire, online. That is very, very few people are involved in the top 100 institutions, and so. They'll still be around, but I think they'll become less relevant. Lots of companies are doing artificial, other kinds of credentialing, right? AI, I have a couple of friends who are in the learning design space. By the way, if you ever wanted to know, yes, your PhD in learning design can make you big bucks on the corporate side. I have a colleague who only does cars. Right, all of his clients are car companies. He does learning design for car companies, right? So, but the question being is, well, how could we design? So we have an insurance company. I want to retrain everybody. They don't need college degrees. We can create our own, right? And you've tried Oboe, right? But now the idea of hire some learning designers to create a pathway for people to learn the skills they need to be able to work at AT&T or Chevron or even become whatever. And so I think we're going to see alternate pathways competing against universities, and that will make Brian's most recent book even more relevant.
Thank you. I'm so glad. Shameless. That's $5 out of you. But no, this is so. Tom, as usual, a great question, and Jose, this vision you've laid.
I don't know if that was an answer, but
It is a great answer. This goes into quite some detail. Um, and I think it's giving people a lot of thoughts right now. Um, let me let me add to that another.
Brian, I think it's in your book that says, right, we have 1,000 plus fewer college institutions than we had 15, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it hasn't been the news because we haven't had a lot of Harvards close, but we've had lots of institutions merge or close.
They rarely get the news because they're, again, as you say, they're not usually the Harvards. They're small colleges that aren't elite, or they're religious schools, or they're local public ones. I mean, I'd be happy to talk about this, but I want to keep the focus on AI, which it's one of the scenarios I offer, which AI may depress academia's fortunes further. We have a wonderful exchange that went on in the chat. Started off with our great mutual friend, Mark Carnes, the father of Reacting to the Past. And Mark, yes, exactly. I'm the same way. Mark says that you mentioned going to the gym, but when we go to the gym, we lift weights to increase our strength. I do the same thing myself. If AI lifts the weight for us, we can lift more weights and set new personal records, but will we be any stronger? Isn't the essence of learning wrestling with, quote, weights beyond our strength? So hang on. There was a quick development of this. The wonderful AI literacy guru, Brent Anders, says, yes, the AI can help you lift properly so you understand what to do and how to do it. You still need to lift, get stronger, but you can be much more effective in the process. John Martin adds, if I go to the gym to lift weights, I hurt myself because I don't know how to do it safely. I see AI is helping me do it safely, which is a good thing. Ruben Puentedura, the founder of Sammer, weighs it and says the trick is to use the AI as the equivalent of better gym machinery. You do exercises you could not have done with better outcomes and less risk of hurting yourself. Mark follows up. Okay, the smart machinery protects me from injuries and also lifts weights for me so that I get a dopamine high for leveling up. Has it really helped me get stronger? So this is a
Okay,
pretty detailed metaphor. I want you to have at it there.
so I'm going to keep with the metaphor. So the current educational system is a bunch of free weights, right? I lift up the dumbbells. Those machines, though, I still have to do the work. But right, those Nautilus machines, all of those, right, where there's like 20 of them, and they each target a different muscle. And so I do one for my legs, I do one for this, I do one when I'm bending over, and so they do keep me safer. But I still do have to. But so right. I think that AI has if we change our assignments, has the ability to find that right, what Vygotsky, the zone of proximal, right, the zone of right difficulty, or as my yoga teacher says, right, nothing grows in the comfort zone, right. So we want discomfort, but not
Wow.
pain.
Wow.
I actually say that to my students like every day. Nothing grows in the comfort zone, right? So, but pain is bad. Discomfort is good. So the question is, how do I get you? But Mark needs more because he's already at he's benching 550, right? So, but somebody else needs less. So AI has the ability to customize. So if I take a prompt like instead of write this, so now, so here's a prompt. Ask an AI, ask me for an analogy for this concept, right? And then pick it apart. Help me make it better. Tell me it's not working, right? So you pick a better analogy. So AI is going to enter here. So it's about changing our assignments. In fact, Stephen Mintz had a list of 22 of these assignments the other day. And how does that guy do it? He writes a novel like every day.
Well, we can tell how he does it. There's a lot of AI.
It's crazy, but so I think there are assignments where instead of having students just write, just do the free weights, which is just write the essay, I have students. So I have on my website a critical thinking prompt. It's in the book too about. So what is the argument you want to make? What's the evidence you want to use? And then the AI pushes back on all the things. Have you considered this? What about that? Here is another framework, right? What happens if you carry this to a logical extreme? What would someone from a different, right? So the AI picks the right place to push back. And so I'm like using one of those machines that's targeting a really specific muscle or a really specific concept. So, that's a pretty major rewrite. I think there's still going to be a place for the free weights, or what I'm going to call the relationships and the people. But I think there's a place for AI to strengthen individual writing skills, individual thinking skills, if we set it up right. But you're right, that how to have friction. There's actually a new book coming out about the future of AI and what educational friction looks like in 5 or 10 years. I saw Jason Goulia is one of the authors. It's a collection of essays that's coming. Someone will know it and put it in the chat.
I'd be interested in that. Please, anyone. The chat is usually brilliant at getting references. And speaking of brilliant references, thank you for working through that metaphor and those ideas in great detail. I hate to rush you, but we're coming in the last 5 minutes, and we've got a bunch of questions coming up. Our Florida friend Shelby Rosengarten asks this. Can you speak about the ethics of instructors using AI for feedback on student work?
So I believe in radical transparency here. So I start with this. I give students a choice. I say, so look, there's 65 of you. It'll take me 2 weeks to read your essays, and you'll get feedback in 2 weeks. Or I can give the AI, I've given it 1,000 previous essays that I did grade because there wasn't AI before. And so I've kept all those essays and feedback. So it really grades like me. In fact, it's less noisy. It's more consistent. One of the focus groups that Eddie did found that students said, this first student raised his hand and said, so when you say you graded my papers from 7 p.m. until 2 a.m., my first question is, when did you grade mine? At 7 or 2, right? How consistent are you? So students recognize that, okay, so AI will be consistent. But here's what I'll do. If you choose the AI grading, you'll have your papers back this afternoon. But tomorrow, I will have 8 hours of open hours, and I will use the time I was going to spend grading your papers to talk to each one of you. I won't be redlining and underlining, circling commas, because the AI will do all that. But I will read your papers, right? I will read them more quickly because I can read them a lot faster when I'm not, doing all that stuff. And then we'll have a conversation, and I will meet with all of you. You'll all get some individual time, and then and if there's something with the AI that's wrong, we'll fix it. And most students will take that. But again, I've given you the choice. I can let you opt out, and I've been radically transparent about what the procedure was, how it works, and what I will do. I think the answer to the ethics depends entirely on how much you're getting paid for how many students, right? If I'm teaching 12 students at a liberal arts college, you better well show up and read them, right? But if you've got 700 students and you're contingent faculty, traveling for 4 hours, this could make your teaching better. My niece went to Texas A&M, and she never had a class smaller than 300 for her first 3 years.
Wow.
She never met a professor. I've never had a conversation with a professor, right? So, so she got feedback from TAs. She got Scantron. Here's one more. So at Hofstra Medical School. So medical schools do only multiple choice tests because they're objective and busy doctors don't have time to grade. So at Hofstra, they came up with a system for short answers. They had the doctors grade them. They tested them. So now they can give, because of AI grading, they can now substitute short answer questions for multiple choice questions, which is a better assessment into student thinking because the AI is doing the grading. So I think the answer is, surprise, it depends, right? It really depends on the circumstances, what you're doing. But I think there is a case that AI grading can be a useful complement to human feedback. How about for macroeconomics, right? So before you hand in your paper, here's the prompt. You are going to respond as a panel of experts. Adam Smith, Milton Friedman, and Robert Reich, you were going to read this paper, and you were going to argue about my paper with me for 20 minutes before I hand it in. Look for whatever. I can give, because otherwise they just get me. They're not going to get that variety, right? So, or how about this? I want you to grade the papers that I've already graded, but I want you to grade them like my worst enemy, or I want you to grade them and give students who disagree with me extra points, because that's hard for a human to do, right? We all like people who agree with us. So I can try alternatives. What happens if I change my rubric and I regrade the papers and I give more points for creativity or more points for disagreeing with me? So that can, I always say AI has bias, but if you know what the bias is, it's easier to fix than human bias, because human bias is really hard to fix, even if you see it and you know what it is.
Famously. I was going to ask a future-oriented question, Jose, and we've only got a minute left, and you've been hitting on the future ideas. If I could, then let me move it to one side and ask a different question. We have hundreds of people involved in this conversation, and the chat is going like wildfire. We have all kinds of comments, all kinds of thoughts. We need to return to this. The question I ask you right now is, what do you advise academic professionals to do to keep up and thoughtfully respond to AI? By academic professionals, I mean staff, I mean faculty, not necessarily senior administrators, not necessarily students unless they're working on this, but faculty and staff, what should we be doing?
So you can't keep up. It's impossible. I'm retired and I can't keep up. It's making me crazy. So, my website tries to do. LinkedIn is a pretty good resource. So try a new tool once every couple of weeks. Retry things every week, but find something that you hate to do. Right, something you really dislike, like accreditation reports, the department schedule. And spend some time trying to see if you can get AI to do it. Don't try something that you like because you like it, right? You don't want to replace that. But find something that you really dislike. Doing your taxes, right? Something, organizing your receipts, something that you dislike, and see if you can spend enough time, because it probably will take you longer to do it the first time with AI. But then maybe, I could automate that. I could do something. Is there something else? Or how about student advising, right? I like talking to students about how they're feeling, but I spend most of my time going, have you taken the right prerequisite? When do you want to study abroad? Oh, you can't take that. Or I have to, right? I got to sign this. So maybe, right? I'd write an AI, I vibe code an AI to check students' prerequisites and make sure they're signed up for the right courses, given their whatever. And then I don't have to do that. I can now say, hey, how you feeling? Right. So, find something you don't like doing and see if AI could change your life. My doctor uses it for the insurance codes, right? Because that saves. I get eye contact with my doctor now. So that. So not everything. I think it's important for us to be the contemplative people who take things slowly and who do all that. But I also think it's impossible to keep up, but we do have to stay in the game, because if we're not teaching ethics in the environment and justice, who will, right? Their corporate employers are not going to say, well, let's take a few months to think about this and maybe we shouldn't do it. That is not going to happen at Grok, right? Elon Musk is not. So I think we do have to be doing that, but we have to be in the game with our students. They need a place to have these contemplative, slow conversations about AI. But we also just can't dig in and say, never, not me, because it's not the world we live in. And we want to be the people who can help students navigate. But I do think, like the internet, like electricity, right? We're not going to be able to hold this off. I forget the example, but who told me, I'll think of this book in a minute, but there were 4,000 carriage makers in the United States in 1890. And you know how many survived, right? They made wheels, they made the body, they made, stuff. They all could have made cars or made parts for cars. But how many of them survived until 1910? One. Its name was Studebaker. Studebaker was a carriage maker. It's the only one that survived into the new era. And so so we do things that are relevant, but we have to pay attention to the fact, no, cars are going to need wheels. We make wheels. We'll be okay. But most people didn't do that. They went out of business.
It sounds like right now we could just carry on for the next hour or the next 6 hours. But we have to pause here. We have to pause because we need Jose to get back to managing the fire hose of AI. All of you have lives to go back to. I've got to just wrap this up with a few notes. First, I want to say thank you. This has been terrific. It's just been wonderful having you as a guest. You are just a dynamo on this, and we need to keep up with you. And we're going to bring you back as soon as you can, so we can keep going with this. A second thing I wanted to mention is this is a great book. Weston put a link to the book on the list. This is Teaching with AI, second edition from Johns Hopkins University Press. So you can grab that and make sure your school grabs it. Buy
it in bulk. Buy it in bulk.
Exactly.
Johns Hopkins has great discounts.
Indeed. Jose's co-author, Eddie Watson, is running the American Association of Colleges and Universities AI Institute next year. And I'll put a link to the application for that, which is terrific. In full disclosure, Jose and I are both faculty in that program. The last thing, I know lots of you have to go, but just quickly in the chat, and when I stop recording, if you want to say it out loud, is there anything that you would like us to do on the forum differently or in addition to keep up with AI? Are there more sessions you'd like us to have, more dynamics, more workshops? Just please let us know, because this is obviously a huge topic. Jose, thank you so much. Please take care. Stay warm and dry, and in where you are, and we'll be in touch soon.